Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good to be here with you this morning. I'm the Reverend William Levwood. My pronouns are he and him. I'm the minister here at the Unitarian Universalist, at Accotink, Unitarian Universalist Church. As we begin our service, I invite you, if you're in person, to silence your phones, and for all of us to take a deep breath as we center ourselves for worship. We open in welcome to the ancestral people of this land, acknowledging that our church, like all of Burke, rests on the unceded territory of the Manahoac tribe of the Great Sioux Nation. We seek healing and the realization of justice with the people of this land who live on and their descendants, the present-day members of the Monacan Indian Nation, the Patawomic Indian Tribe of Virginia, and the Piscataway Indian Nation. We honor the ancestors as we move toward healing so that all together shall one day know full justice.
Welcome to Accotink Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Sheila Doles, and my pronouns are she, her, and I'm happy to be your worship associate today. This congregation is a welcoming and inclusive community that seeks to create a more just and more compassionate world. If you're new to Accotink and would like to talk more about this church, just about anybody here can tell you about us. Our greeters, our minister, myself, people with cross-stitched name tags have been around for a while, so talk to any of us. Whether you're a longtime member or a newcomer or something in between, we encourage you to stay for our social hour online and in person immediately after the service. We're so delighted that you decided to join us today. Welcome.
I was thinking about my first Sunday here, which was online, and that Brad had prepared the choir to sing a song about home. And it was so moving to have that song. Home was actually the theme of my ordination when I was ordained in Tallahassee. And also, I think it really encapsulates what it feels like to be in this congregation. It feels like a family. It feels like an inclusive and welcoming spiritual home. Last Sunday, I spoke about caring for each other in community. I talked about that in the basic sense of the word care. We do that for each other in the basic sense of the word, but also in the acronym that is for being calming, accepting, resonant, and energizing presences for each other. This week, we're going to talk about centering love and how centering love can grow our spirits. What does it mean to really center love in our Unitarian Universalist faith? And then next week, we're going to talk about the Side with Love campaign, the history of that campaign, all the ways that we have acted together for justice as a denomination. These are the things that we do together. Care and community, grow our spirits, and act for justice. And while we're doing all of that, we're also inspiring each other to live our values in all aspects of our lives. Did anybody notice this? What is this? There's a trunk or a chest up here. Looks like a pirate left it or something.
I think it's called the Wonder Box.
This is the Wonder Box?
The Wonder Box.
Do we put our offertory in it? What's it for?
No, I think it has some sort of surprise.
Oh, it has a surprise inside? Are you curious about what the surprise is? You want to come open it up? You want to open it up for us so we can see what's in there? Wonder Box. That's fabulous. So these words on here are the words that are being proposed to be our new value statements to replace our current our current principles. He's like, he's a supporter of the current principles. He's not into this new. I know some of you feel that way too. And with each of these, there's a phrase to describe the value. So for transformation, that phrase is that we adapt to a changing world. For equity, you might recognize that it's very similar to our current first principle. It's about every person flourishing with dignity and worthiness. Interdependence is also very similar to our current seventh principle about honoring the interdependent web of existence. What else? What do you got there? Generosity, cultivating a spirit of gratitude and hope. That's really new. We don't have anything like that in our current principles. Generosity, cultivating a spirit of gratitude and hope. Justice is like our eighth principle, which this congregation adopted unanimously. It says that we work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities. We've got pluralism, which is about celebrating that we're all sacred beings, diverse in our cultures, experiences, and theologies. And then love is at the center of all of these values. You can see here it at the center. Now, I want to say a little bit more about this, but I need somebody to hold this because I need my notes for this next part. So that's just the first phrase in the new proposed thing. There's a bunch of phrases, and I want to say that I also imagine this is called the flower of values, but I also imagine it like a rainbow. And I said I wasn't going to say this, but I think there's a way that these values can be looked at like if you give a mouse a cookie, okay? So I think it works like this, okay? If you honor the interdependent web of all existence, then you're going to work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where everybody flourishes with dignity. And when everybody is flourishing with dignity, then we can really celebrate our diversity and how we're all sacred beings. And that's going to help us adapt to a changing world. And isn't that going to cultivate some gratitude and some hope? Now, that's the aspirational values part of our new proposed values. There's also a doing section. We covenant to do some stuff. And that is also, if you give a mouse a cookie, you can do it with that too. So if you cherish earth and all beings by nurturing relationships of care and respect, then you're going to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. And you're not just going to dismantle, you're also going to build and sustain a different kind of world by building and sustaining fully accessible and inclusive communities. And once again, if you do that, then we can learn from each other. Now that we've made it accessible and inclusive of all of us, we can really learn from our many deep wisdoms, the differences and the commonalities. And then if we're doing that, then we can collectively transform and grow together. And if we're doing that, then we're going to generously want to share our Unitarian Universalist faith through our presence and pour our resources into sharing with others this wonderful faith that we have. Now, how do we do that? There's even a third layer to the rainbow. If you give a mouse a cookie, or if you begin with humility and reverence as you acknowledge our place in the great web of life, and then you're going to repair harm and damage relationships, and you're going to do all of that using really inclusive democratic processes. You're going to empower the leadership of those who haven't had power before. That's one that isn't in there yet, but I'm hoping they'll add that to the equity. And then that's going to help us to embrace our differences and our commonalities, which is going to make new insights emerge. Remember, that's how we're going to adapt to a changing world, is to have new insights emerging and be open to that change. And then finally, we're going to do it by connecting to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality, which on this day when we're centering love, that's kind of like your textbook definition of love, connecting in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. So we'll have more to say about all of this later in the service, but now we're going to share with each other and care for each other in another way.
The Power to Hold by Reverend William Levwood. All I want is to hold you gently, to keep you safe, to love you well. And I have, and I will, and I haven't, and I won't. This is what love is, the power to hold, the power that holds us together. We hold each other gently, keep each other safe, love each other well. We have, and we will, we haven't, and we won't. You, my child, partner, sibling, parent, cousin, friend, neighbor, stranger. I remember how scared I was to drop you, so aware of the fragility of your body, so overwhelmed by the responsibility of caring for you. And I'm still scared. And I never dropped you, and I have dropped you many times, and I have dropped so many others. And I remember the trust falls in that dance class, and how I fell and wasn't caught. I was dropped, and also I have never been dropped, how the ground caught me. And this is love. This is love. This is love, not a feeling or even an action, but a practice, a discipline. And we keep on because love is the power to hold, the power that holds, the power that holds us, the power that holds us together.
So I don't know if everybody knows, but our UU principles are considered for revision every 15 years. It's in our association's bylaws that we consider revising them every 15 years, which I think is remarkable and shows what a living tradition we are. The current proposed revisions, as I mentioned in our Time for All Ages, put love at the center of our Unitarian Universalism, which is at once something new and something very old. In 2019, my friend and colleague, UU minister, the Reverend Adam Dyer, in a blog post, pointed out that love is absent from our current UU principles. And later that year, he made a version of our current principles with love added to each. Now, prior to the adoption of the current principles, which happened in 1985, love has been central throughout the history of both our Unitarian and our Universalist traditions. And the first version of our Unitarian Universalist principles from the 1961 merger of Unitarianism and Universalism included love, albeit in language I don't imagine we would embrace today. At that time, the second principle read, to cherish and spread the universal truths taught by the great prophets and teachers of humanity in every age and tradition, immemorially summarized in the Judeo-Christian heritage as love to God and love to man. Not really a principle we could get down with today, not with its patriarchal love to man or its patriarchal God, at least not this feminist. Still, I think Reverend Adam Dyer was onto something with his call to include love in our principles. And apparently the commission charged with proposing a revision to our principles agrees, since the proposed revision of our UU principles says love is at the center of our shared values. And at first, when I read the proposed revisions that came out in November, when I read them in November, the earlier draft, I wanted more definition for what this new proposed version means by love. I mean, on the Sunday before Valentine's Day, it feels particularly understandable to question what we mean when we say love is at the center of our values. Now, the proposed revision only has a few phrases to define what love is. So let's look at those phrases and see if they shed some light on what we mean when we say that we aim to put love at the center of our shared values. Love, the proposed revisions say, love is the power that holds us together. That's a simple phrase that, for me at least, conjures powerful imagery. Love is a power that holds us together. I imagine an infant being held, a child embraced as they sit on a beloved grandparent's lap, a kitten or a puppy resting in a child's arms or struggling in a child's arms. Two children hugging, two adults hugging, an adult hugging a child. And those last few images of hugs can be expanded. The children might be holding each other, huddled together in fear, giving each other comfort in the face of some challenge or difficulty. Or the children might be joyfully hugging with huge smiles on their faces, falling over with their enthusiasm. The two adults might be hugging and greeting after a long time apart, or they might be holding each other in grief after the death of a loved one. Or it could be a hug of reconciliation after a difficult conversation that helped heal wounds and repair harms between two people, or even between two peoples. The hug between the adult and the child could be a hug of relief as they find each other after having gotten lost from each other in a crowd moments before the hug. Or the adult might be comforting the child who's just fallen and skinned their knee. Or the child might be comforting the adult. The child's mirror neuron system activated in empathy when they see the adult crying. These are just some of the ways that we might experience being held. There are other ways. I'm sure that you can think of other ways. I feel held when I'm in a forest. I feel held when I'm floating in water, whether in a pool, a lake, or the ocean. I feel held, curled up in bed by the warmth and softness of a blanket. I can even feel held by the right words at the right time when those are the words that I need. Whether they're spoken to me in conversation or I read them in a poem or a story. I can feel held just by someone holding my hand, or even just placing their hand on my shoulder, or even just looking at me with empathy and care in their eyes. Love is the power that holds us together, whether by wrapping us up in an encompassing embrace or knitting us together in community. Notice, too, how this phrase from the proposed new principles defines not only love, but gives us a hint about power. This love that holds us together isn't a power over, but a shared power that holds us together in love and care and community. Now, there's another way that love is described in the proposed new principles. It says, we are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. I have to admit, when I think of love, the first thing that comes to mind is not being accountable to each other. I had to sit with that for a bit. I had to let that sink in. And honestly, when it did sink in, I can't say that I liked it. I'm not saying I don't like it in the proposed revision. I'm just saying I didn't like the feelings it brought up for me, because when I let that sink in, I realized all the ways that I haven't been accountable to others, ways I have failed to be loving. I'm flooded with images of times when I've harmed others in ways both big and small, failures in my parenting, falling outs with friends and family, letting my anger get the best of me, letting my fear get the best of me, not being there when someone needed me, saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, not doing the right thing, not doing anything at all when something definitely needed to be done. All the ways that I am and have been complicit in racism and sexism, homophobia, transphobia, the destruction of healthy ecological habitats, mass extinctions, mass incarceration, the list goes on and on, whether I'm thinking systemically or personally. Which is why I love and am grateful for the second part of that phrase. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. Through the spiritual discipline of love. This placing love at the center is a practice. It's a discipline. Now, I feel like I know something about discipline from my training as a modern dancer. I learned to dance by practicing over and over and over, by messing up, by not getting it right, by getting it partly right, and mostly by then doing it again and again and again, another plie, another tendu, another swing. And I didn't do it on my own. I engaged in this discipline in a shared engagement with others. I had mentors. I was mentored by my teachers. I was mentored by my peers. We, all of us together, were part of a long tradition of dancing, a living tradition that, like our living tradition of Unitarian Universalism, is always growing and changing. I was mentored in the discipline by this living tradition. And the discipline of modern dance was a practice of doing, right? It's clear with dance that you don't just read a book and then say, oh, I got it. I'm an amazing dancer now. I read the book, I got the information. No, it's a doing that you have to put into practice. The same is true with the spiritual discipline of love. The same is true with our Unitarian Universalist values. We have to do them. We have to practice them. Last Sunday, I spoke about the findings of relational neuroscience. I shared the CARE method of engaging in growth-fostering relationships that are caring, calming, accepting, resonantly empathetic, and energizing. Obviously, those are beautiful ideas, but they're not meant to just be ideas, right? We have to engage in growth-fostering relationships that are calming, accepting, resonantly empathetic, and energizing, so that through that practice, through that discipline, let's call it a discipline, we learn. Our very neural pathways in our brains are formed and reformed through that practice, and we become better vessels of calm, acceptance, resonance, and energy for ourselves and for others. We are accountable to each other through the spiritual discipline of love. So when I put these two phrases together, I feel how love is the power that holds us together by giving us a discipline. a practice for being accountable to each other. I am held in love, imperfectly, of course. And I am learning to hold others in love, imperfectly, of course. And this love is transformative. It's transformative to feel myself held in love, and it's transformative to engage in a discipline of loving, a discipline that engages me in accountability at all levels of my engagement with the world, in my interpersonal interactions, my ongoing relationships, my work life, my cultural life, my engagement as a citizen of this nation and as a citizen of the world, my political life, my engagement with the more than human world. Thank you, Jane Taylor, for the nearly native garden. That's the third phrase. I want to share the third phrase, and that's it. There's only those three that speaks about love in the new proposed revision of our principles, to actively engage in the transformation of the world through liberating love, to actively engage in the transformation of the world through liberating love. As love holds us together, and through the spiritual discipline of loving, we can and we do transform ourselves, each other, and the world. So let's put love at the center of our lives and the center of our Unitarian Universalism. All I want is to hold you gently, to keep you safe, to love you well. And I have, and I will, and I haven't, and I won't. This is what love is, the power to hold, the power that holds us together. We hold each other gently, keep each other safe, love each other well. We have and we will, we haven't and we won't. You, my child, parent, sibling, partner, cousin, friend, neighbor, stranger. I remember how scared I was to drop you, so aware of the fragility of your body, so overwhelmed by the responsibility of caring for you, and I'm still scared. And I never dropped you, and I have dropped you many times, and I have dropped so many others. And I remember the trust falls in that dance class and how I fell and wasn't caught. I was dropped, and also I have never been dropped, how the ground caught me and keeps catching me. And this is love. This is love. This is love. Not a feeling or even an action, but a practice, a discipline. And we keep on because love is the power to hold, the power that holds, the power that holds us, the power that holds us together. Love is the practice of holding and being held together. May it be so. May we be among those who engage the practice of loving. We're actually going to have our community blessing as our chalice extinguishing words. So I invite you to, as we extinguish our chalice, to say these words with me from David Bumbaugh. This church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all our differences and beneath all our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together in spite of time, death, and the space between the stars. We pause now in silent unity to that unity.